The dust swirled across the barren Wyoming landscape as Willow Foster sat alone in the hay, her once pristine wedding dress now stained with dirt and tears. It was May 1875, and what should have been the happiest day of her 20-year-old life had turned into her most humiliating one when her groom, Nathaniel Thompson, had failed to appear at the small country church in Laramie. Willow had fled the pitying glances of the townsfolk, running until her legs gave out near the Thompson ranch where she'd sought refuge in the hay barn. The irony wasn't lost on her seeking comfort at the very place owned by the family that had just caused her such pain. But it was far from town, and she needed space to breathe, to think, to mourn the future she'd planned. Hours passed as she sat there, her blonde hair falling loose from its intricate arrangement, pins scattered in the hay around her. The sun was beginning to set when she heard the creak of a wagon approaching. Willow didn't bother to move or hide. What did it matter now who saw her in such a state? The wagon stopped, and heavy boots hit the ground with a thud. A shadow fell across the barn entrance. "Miss, you all right in there?" The voice was deep, concerned, with a slight drawl that marked him as not being from these parts originally. Willow looked up through swollen eyes to see a tall man framed in the doorway, his broad shoulders blocking the fading sunlight. She recognized him vaguely, Forrest Hayes, one of the ranch hands who worked for the Thompsons. She'd seen him around town occasionally, always keeping to himself. "Does it look like I'm all right, Mr. Hayes?" Her voice was hoarse from crying. Forrest stepped into the barn, removing his hat. His face was weathered by the sun, but kind, with blue eyes that held genuine concern. "No, madam, it doesn't, and I'm mighty sorry about what Nathaniel did today. The whole town's talking about it." Willow flinched. Of course they were. In a town the size of Laramie, being left at the altar would be the juiciest gossip they'd had in months. "Have you come to gawk too? Or perhaps Mr. Thompson sent you to remove me from his property?" "Neither." Forrest shook his head. "I quit working for the Thompsons about an hour ago after I heard what happened. No decent man leaves a woman waiting at the altar." That surprised her. "You quit your job over something that has nothing to do with you." "Some things are about principle, Miss Foster." He stepped closer, hesitantly. "It's getting dark and it's not safe for you to be out here alone. Let me take you home." "I can't go back to town like this." The thought of facing those pitying stares again made her stomach churn. Forrest studied her for a moment, then nodded as if making a decision. "Then I'll take you to my cabin. It's not much, but it's clean, and you can stay there until you decide what you want to do next. I'll sleep in the barn." Willow looked at him suspiciously. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" "Because my mama raised me right." His lips quirked into a small smile. "And you're not exactly a stranger. Everyone knows Willow Foster, the schoolteacher with a voice like an angel in the church choir." A flush crept up her neck. She hadn't realized he'd ever noticed her before today. "Please, Miss Foster, let me help you." After a moment's hesitation, Willow nodded. What choice did she have? She couldn't stay in this barn all night, and she certainly couldn't face town yet. Forrest approached slowly, as if she were a spooked horse. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to help her up. When she nodded again, he bent down and gently lifted her into his arms. Willow stiffened at first. She wasn't used to being carried, especially by a man she barely knew. But there was something reassuring about the strong, steady way he held her, as if she weighed nothing at all. He carried her to his wagon and carefully set her on the seat before climbing up beside her. "It's about 4 miles to my place, not far." As they rode in silence, Willow stared at the darkening landscape. The initial shock of the day was wearing off, leaving a hollow feeling in its place. "Did you know?" she finally asked. "Did you know Nathaniel was planning to abandon me today?" Forrest kept his eyes on the road. "No, madam. If I had, I'd have had some strong words for him. Found out when everyone else did, when his father announced he'd run off with that saloon girl from Cheyenne." Willow winced. She hadn't known that part, that there was another woman. The humiliation burned even deeper. "I'm sorry," Forrest said, noticing her reaction. "That was thoughtless of me. No, it's better to know the truth." She smoothed her wrinkled dress. I suppose I should be grateful I found out what kind of man he was before we were married, not after. Forrest nodded. That's one way of looking at it. They fell back into silence until they reached a small cabin nestled against a stand of pines. It was simple but sturdy looking, with a corral off to one side where a couple of horses grazed. It's not much, Forrest said as he helped her down from the wagon, once again lifting her in his strong arms rather than letting her step down into the mud. But it's home. Inside, the cabin was surprisingly neat. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, with a small table and 2 chairs nearby. A bed was tucked in one corner, with a trunk at its foot. Shelves holding books lined another wall, more books than Willow would have expected a cowboy to own. You read, she said, surprised. Forrest smiled slightly as he set her down. Whenever I can, not much else to do out here in the winters. He moved to the fireplace and started building a fire. Make yourself comfortable. I'll heat some water so you can wash up, and I've got some stew left from yesterday I can warm for dinner. Willow stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, suddenly aware of how improper this situation was. She was alone in a cabin with a man she barely knew, miles from town. Mr. Hayes, I appreciate your kindness, but I don't want to impose. It's no imposition. He straightened from the fire. And please call me Forrest. Mr. Hayes was my father. Forrest, then, but what will people say? It's not proper. People will always talk, Miss Foster. But I gave you my word I'll sleep in the barn. Your reputation will remain intact. His eyes were steady on hers. Unless you'd rather I take you back to town, Willow shook her head quickly. No, thank you. As promised, Forrest heated water for her to wash and warmed up a surprisingly tasty venison stew. They ate at his small table, making cautious conversation. She learned he was 26 and had come to Wyoming from Texas 5 years ago. He'd worked for the Thompsons for 3 of those years, saving money to build up his own small herd of cattle. What will you do now? She asked. Without your job at the Thompson Ranch, Forrest shrugged. I've been thinking of moving on anyway, maybe head up to Montana Territory. Heard there's good grazing land available there. The thought of him leaving sent an unexpected pang through Willow. Because of what happened today, because of me. Not because of you, because of him. Forrest's jaw tightened. A man who'd treat a woman the way Nathaniel treated you isn't someone I care to work for. After dinner, Forrest insisted she take the bed while he made a pallet by the fire. Exhausted from the emotional day, Willow fell asleep almost immediately, still wearing the borrowed shirt he'd given her to sleep in. Her ruined wedding dress hung carefully over a chair. She awoke to the smell of coffee and bacon. Forrest was at the stove, his back to her, hair still damp from washing. Good morning, she said, sitting up and pulling the blanket around her. He turned, a smile warming his face. Morning, thought you might be hungry. Over breakfast, Willow considered her options. She could return to town and face the gossip, or I've been thinking of leaving Laramie, she admitted. Even before yesterday, I've been the school teacher for 2 years now, and while I love the children, there's not much else for me here. Where would you go? Forrest asked. I don't know. Denver, maybe, or San Francisco. Somewhere I could start fresh, where nobody knows me as the woman Nathaniel Thompson left at the altar. Forrest nodded thoughtfully. Big cities have their advantages, but they're not always kind to a woman alone. I know, but staying here feels impossible now. She sighed. Would you? Would you be willing to take me to the train station in Cheyenne? It's a 2-day ride, I know, but I could pay you for your trouble. Forrest studied her for a long moment. I could do that, but are you sure that's what you want? Running away because of what someone else did, his words stung. I'm not running away, I'm moving forward. There's a difference between moving forward and running away, he said gently. One is a choice made from strength, the other from fear. Willow bristled. You don't know anything about me, Mr. Hayes. You're right, I apologize. He stood and gathered their plates. Of course I'll take you to Cheyenne if that's what you want. We can leave tomorrow if that suits you. Willow spent the day helping around the cabin, wanting to be useful. She found an old shirt of Forrest's and some thread, and set about mending tears she'd noticed. It gave her hands something to do while her mind raced with plans and doubts. Forrest spent most of the day outside, tending to his small herd and preparing for their journey. When he returned in the evening, he seemed surprised to find his shirts mended and a rabbit stew simmering on the stove. "You didn't have to do all this," he said, hanging his hat by the door. "I wanted to. It's the least I could do after your kindness." Willow stirred the stew. "Besides, it gave me something to focus on besides my own troubles." Over dinner, she asked more about his life before Wyoming. He spoke of growing up on a ranch in Texas, losing his parents to cholera when he was 17 and working his way north over the years. "Why Montana?" she asked. "Why not stay in Wyoming?" Forrest considered the question. "Wyoming's filling up, too many big ranchers pushing out the small operators. Montana's still got room to breathe." He paused. "And maybe I'm looking for something too, something that feels like home. Have you ever been married?" The question slipped out before she could think better of it. A shadow crossed his face. "No, came close once back in Texas. Elizabeth was her name. She chose another man, a banker with steady prospects, not a cowboy with dust in his boots and dreams in his head." "I'm sorry." "Don't be." "It was years ago," he smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "What about you? Was Nathaniel your first love?" Willow looked down at her plate. "I thought he was. Now I wonder if I ever really knew him at all." That night, as she lay in his bed staring at the ceiling, Willow considered Forrest's words about running away versus moving forward. Was she making a decision from strength or fear? The line seemed blurry from where she stood. The next morning they set out for Cheyenne. Forrest had packed provisions for the 2-day journey, and Willow wore her wedding dress, having nothing else. She'd washed it as best she could, but it remained a painful reminder of her humiliation. As they traveled, the wide open spaces of Wyoming stretched around them, beautiful and intimidating in their vastness. They talked more freely now, sharing stories and observations. Forrest pointed out landmarks and told her about the natural history of the region. Willow found herself laughing at his dry humor, surprised at how comfortable she felt in his company. They made camp that night beneath a canopy of stars, more brilliant than Willow had ever seen them. Forrest built a fire and prepared a simple dinner, keeping a respectful distance as they ate. "Have you thought more about your plans?" he asked as they sat by the fire. "Once you reach Cheyenne," Willow hugged her knees to her chest. "I have some savings, enough for a train ticket to Denver and to keep me until I find work. I'm qualified to teach, or I could work as a seamstress if necessary." Forrest nodded slowly. "Denver's a growing city, plenty of opportunities for someone smart and capable like you." "You think I'm capable?" His eyes met hers across the fire. "I do. Anyone who can keep their dignity after what you've been through has strength to spare." Warmth spread through her chest at his words. No one had ever described her as strong before. "Pretty, yes, sweet, certainly, but never strong." "What about you?" she asked. "When will you leave for Montana?" "Soon, I reckon. Need to sell my cabin and cattle first, then I'll head north before winter sets in." The thought of him journeying alone into unknown territory worried her. "Isn't that dangerous, going to a new territory alone?" he smiled. "Life's always got risks, Miss Foster. Question is whether the reward is worth it." That night, sleeping under the stars with just a blanket between her and the hard ground, Willow dreamed of wide open spaces and a future she couldn't quite see clearly. They reached Cheyenne late the next day. The town was busier than Laramie, with more buildings and more people. As they approached the hotel where Willow would stay until the next train to Denver, a sense of panic rose in her chest. Forrest must have noticed her tension. "You all right?" "Yes, no." She twisted her hands in her lap. I don't know if this is right." He pulled the wagon to a stop a block from the hotel. "You having second thoughts?" "I don't know what I'm having." She looked at the bustling street. "Everything's happening so fast. 3 days ago I thought I knew exactly what my future held. Now I'm in a strange city about to board a train to an even stranger one." Forrest was quiet for a moment. "You don't have to decide right this minute. Get a room, rest, think things through." The train doesn't leave until tomorrow afternoon. Relief washed over her. You're right. I need time to think. He helped her down from the wagon and carried her small bag into the hotel. After securing her a room, he hesitated in the lobby. Will you be all right? He asked, concern evident in his blue eyes. Yes, thank you. She found herself reluctant to say goodbye. Will you? Will you still be in town tomorrow? I'll be around. Need to pick up some supplies before heading back. He shifted his hat in his hands. Maybe we could have breakfast, if you'd like company, that is, Willow smiled. I'd like that very much. After he left, Willow sat on the bed in her small hotel room, feeling oddly bereft. In just 3 days, Forrest Hayes had become a source of stability in her upturned world. The thought of continuing on without him left her cold. That night she barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. By morning she was no closer to being certain of her path. Forrest met her in the hotel dining room, looking freshly shaved and wearing a clean shirt. Something fluttered in her chest at the sight of him. Sleep well? He asked as they sat down. Not really, she admitted. Too many thoughts. They ordered breakfast, and as they waited, Forrest pulled something from his pocket, a small book of poetry by Walt Whitman. Thought you might like something to read on your journey, he said, sliding it across the table. It's not new, but the words still shine. Touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift, Willow opened the book and found an inscription inside. To Willow, may you find your path forward. With respect, Forrest Hayes. Thank you, she said softly. This means a great deal to me. It's nothing. He looked slightly embarrassed. Just thought you might want something to pass the time. As they ate, Willow found herself studying him, the way his hands moved as he talked, the crinkles at the corners of his eyes when he smiled, the careful way he listened when she spoke. In 3 days, he'd shown her more genuine respect than Nathaniel had in months of courtship. What is Montana like? She asked suddenly. Have you been there before? Forrest looked surprised by the question. Once, briefly. It's beautiful country, big sky, good grass, mountains in the distance. Reminds me of Wyoming, but wilder somehow. And you'd build a ranch there, start over. That's the plan. He studied her face. Why do you ask? Willow took a deep breath. I'm not sure Denver is right for me, a big city, no connections, no real plan. So you're reconsidering Laramie? No. She twisted the napkin in her lap. I was wondering. This might sound crazy, but what if I came to Montana too? Forrest's eyes widened. To Montana with me? Not with you exactly, but to the same area. Her cheeks burned. Every territory needs teachers, don't they? And I could help you set up your ranch. As friends, she added quickly. I'm good with accounts and I can cook. And Willow, he interrupted gently. Why would you want to do that? You barely know me. I know you're kind, I know you're honorable. She met his gaze steadily. And I know that in 3 days with you, I've felt more respected and valued than I did in 6 months with Nathaniel. Forrest was quiet for a long moment. Montana's no easy place for a woman. It's rough country, sparsely settled. I'm stronger than I look. She smiled slightly. Someone told me that recently. A slow smile spread across his face. That you are, so, what do you think? Forrest reached across the table and took her hand. I think we'd need to do things proper. You'd need your own place at first, or stay with a respectable family in whatever settlement we find. I won't have people thinking I took advantage of you. Hope bloomed in her chest. So you're not opposed to the idea? Opposed? He squeezed her hand. Willow, having you along would make the journey 1,000 times brighter, but I need to be sure this is what you want, not just a reaction to what happened. It's not, she said firmly, or not entirely, what Nathaniel did. It made me realize I was settling for a life I thought I should want, not one I truly did. I've always dreamed of adventure, of seeing more of the world than just Laramie. I just never had the courage to admit it. Forrest's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. If you're certain, then I would be honored to have you join me on this journey, but I want you to take more time to think about it. A week, at least. Come back to my cabin, rest, consider all your options. If you still want to head to Montana, then we'll make plans. Willow nodded, knowing he was right. This wasn't a decision to make in haste. A week, then. They left Cheyenne that afternoon, heading back toward Laramie. The return journey seemed shorter somehow, filled with conversation about books they'd both read, places they'd like to see, and tentative plans for a future neither had imagined days before. Back at Forrest's cabin, they fell into an easy routine. Willow cooked and mended, Forrest tended his cattle and made repairs around the property. In the evenings, they would read together by the fire or simply talk, learning each other's histories and dreams. On the fourth night, as a thunderstorm raged outside, Forrest told her about his childhood dream of having a ranch of his own. Not some massive spread like the cattle barons have, but enough land to raise good stock, to build something that could be passed down to children someday. Children. Willow asked softly. Forrest's eyes met hers across the room. Always wanted a family, never found the right woman to build one with, or thought I hadn't. Willow's heart raced at the implication. Forrest. He moved to sit beside her on the small sofa. I know it's too soon. I know you're still healing, but I need you to know that my feelings for you aren't just friendly. She looked down at her hands. I'm not sure what I feel. Everything's happened so fast. I understand. He gently tilted her chin up. I'm not asking for promises, Willow, just honesty, honestly. I feel safe with you, respected, seen, she smiled slightly. And when you smile at me, my heart beats faster. Is that enough for now? It's more than enough. His hand moved to cup her cheek. May I kiss you just once? Willow nodded and Forrest leaned forward, pressing his lips to hers in a gentle, questioning kiss. Unlike Nathaniel's demanding kisses, this one asked rather than took, offered rather than claimed. When he pulled back, his eyes searched hers. All right, he whispered. More than all right, she replied, and this time she was the one who leaned forward to continue what they'd started. As the week passed, their connection deepened. Willow found herself falling for this quiet, thoughtful man who treated her with such care and respect. By the time the 7th day arrived, her decision was made. I want to go to Montana with you, she told him over breakfast. Not just as friends or companions, but to see if what's growing between us could become something more. The smile that lit Forrest's face was brighter than any she'd seen before. Are you sure, Willow? Truly sure? I'm sure. She reached across the table to take his hand. But I have conditions. Name them. First, we do things properly. As you said, I'll need my own place until we decide if marriage is right for us. Her cheeks heated at her boldness. Second, I want to teach. Wherever we settle, I want to establish a school, Forrest nodded. And third, we're partners in this. Equal partners. I won't be just a wife if we marry. I want to help build whatever future we create together. I wouldn't have it any other way. He squeezed her hand. You're an extraordinary woman, Willow Foster. Any man who doesn't see that is a fool. The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Forrest sold his cabin and most of his cattle, keeping only his best breeding stock to take north. Willow returned briefly to Laramie to resign from her teaching position and collect her belongings, holding her head high despite the whispers that followed her. To silence the gossips and protect Willow's reputation, they were married in a simple ceremony in Laramie before departing. It wasn't the wedding Willow had once dreamed of, but standing beside Forrest as they exchanged vows, she knew it was right in a way her planned marriage to Nathaniel never had been. They set out for Montana in early August, driving a wagon loaded with supplies and leading a small herd of cattle. The journey was challenging, harsh weather, difficult terrain, and occasional tensions with Native American tribes made for slow progress. But each evening, as they made camp beneath the vast sky, Willow felt more alive than she ever had before. Forrest proved to be an excellent teacher, showing her how to ride properly, how to manage the cattle, even how to shoot a rifle for protection. In turn, she read to him in the evenings, kept their accounts in meticulous order, and brought a warmth to their camp that made the hardships bearable. Their physical relationship developed slowly, with a tenderness that brought tears to Willow's eyes. Forrest never pushed, always asked, always ensured her comfort and pleasure were paramount. In his arms, she discovered aspects of herself she'd never known existed. They reached Montana Territory in late September, settling in a valley near the Bitterroot Mountains. The nearest town was small but growing, and welcomed the arrival of a qualified teacher and an experienced cattleman. As promised, Forrest built Willow a small schoolhouse, and she soon had a dozen students ranging in age from 6 to 16. Their ranch grew steadily over the next years. Hard work and Forrest's knowledge of cattle breeding led to a reputation for quality stock that brought buyers from as far away as Oregon. Willow's school expanded as more families settled in the area, and she became known for her progressive teaching methods. 5 years after leaving Wyoming, on a spring morning much like the one when they'd first met, Willow sat on their front porch, watching Forrest teach their 3-year-old son Fletcher to ride a gentle pony. Their daughter Emma, just a year old, dozed in her lap. Contentment filled her heart as she observed the man she'd grown to love deeply over the years. Forrest looked up and caught her watching, his smile still able to quicken her pulse. He lifted Fletcher from the pony and carried him toward the porch, the boy giggling as his father pretended to stumble and fall. "Mama, did you see me riding?" Fletcher called as they approached. "I did, my brave boy. You're a natural, just like your father." Forrest sat beside her on the porch swing, settling Fletcher between them. "What were you thinking about? You had that faraway look," Willow smiled. "I was thinking about a hay barn in Wyoming and how sometimes the worst day of your life can lead to the best decision you'll ever make." Forrest leaned over to kiss her softly. "I thank God every day that I found you sitting there. And I thank God you had the courage to lift me up when I was at my lowest." She squeezed his hand. "We've built something beautiful here, haven't we? More beautiful than I ever dreamed possible." He looked out at their ranch, the sturdy barn, the grazing cattle, the fields of hay ready for cutting. "And we're just getting started." As the sun began to set over the mountains, casting golden light across their land, Willow leaned her head against her husband's shoulder, surrounded by the family they'd created together. From heartbreak and humiliation had come a love stronger and truer than anything she could have imagined that day in the hay barn. Not an ending, but a beginning one that continued to unfold with each passing day in this wild, beautiful land they now called home.